Anybody of you who could differentiate or give the difference between animal welfare and animal rights. Jan Adrian, I want to hear you, or else I will tell your mom if you will not recite well.
Difference po ng animal welfare and animal rights po.
Uh-huh.
Yung animal welfare po, it focuses po on yung responsible protection of animals, and animal rights po, it's dapat wala pong influence yung humans sa mga animals po. Yun po yung
Anong ibig sabihin ng anong ibig mong sabihin na walang influence yung humans sa animals?
Like let them be na for example po in like a forest po, bawal po mag-hunt doon, like let the animals be there.
Okay, so ibig sabihin pag animal rights, kung ano yung rights ng human, yun din ang rights nila, na hindi pwede silang patayin, hindi pwede silang gamitin, hindi pwede silang gamitin as ulam o gagamitin sa lahat ng mga sports and etc. etc. Whereas in animal welfare, we are being taught on how to use the animal responsibly. Okay? So parang doon sa animal rights, pinagbabawalan tayo na gamitin ang mga animals for our own good. Whereas doon sa animal welfare, pwede natin gamitin ang mga animals but with responsibility. Okay? So, kita niyo na yung difference?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. So, let's start. So, module 2 is about welfare, assessment, and the 5 freedoms. So the learning objectives of this module is to understand the concept and potential uses of the 5 freedoms, to understand the difference between factors affecting welfare and actual welfare performance, to use the severity, duration, number affected framework to quantify welfare, to appreciate the science can provide information and the severity of welfare problems. So those are the learning objectives of this module. Now, the contents of this module there are 4 contents of this module. These are the 5 freedoms, the welfare factors, the quantifying welfare, and the assessing significance. Now, assessing human welfare. How are you feeling at this moment? Sino yung na-late? May ano kung sino yung na-late?
Doc, ako po, Doc. Ako po.
Sino na nga ikaw?
Agustin Mark Anthony po, Doc.
Mark Anthony, how are you feeling now?
Mabuti naman po, Doc.
Mabuti? Sa anong paraan na mabuti?
Kahit pa paano, Doc, nakakasabay dito sa online class po.
Okay, very good. So, in assessing human welfare, before considering animal welfare, it is worth thinking about human welfare. So, kung iniisip natin yung welfare natin, dapat isipin din natin yung welfare ng mga animals, no? Ganun din ang kung ano yung iniisip natin na ikakabuti natin, dapat ganun din ang isipin natin sa mga animals. So if one asks people how they are feeling at the moment, they often respond with a single phrase or concept. So what is that concept? So they may be feeling good or they may be feeling bad. So if you feel good, you feel fantastic, you feel pretty, you feel good, you feel reasonable, and overall you're okay. But if you're feeling bad, you feel terrible, you feel miserable, you don't feel good, you feel bad. So your welfare is poor. So if an individual use the phrases shown here in your slide or similar statements, they can then be ranked on the continuum from good to poor. So
Doc?
Okay, so why? Bakit you feel good or you feel bad or you feel poor? So, dito natin mami-measure. Diyan sa slide na nakikita ninyo. You feel poor if you're not in a comfortable place. No. You feel poor, yes. You feel poor if you are not in comfortable situation. Like you have a hard chair, tigas na upuan, o mainit na room kung saan kayo ngayon naka-online. So you feel poor. Si Adrian, kaya tinanong ko kanina kung kumain na daw siya, pero baka nagugutom naman siya. However, he might be feeling okay, no? So hindi man siya gutom, okay lang. Or you feel very good if you are in an air-conditioned room or in a cold room, no, and feeling comfortable. And with this work, you feel maybe good because you missed me. Excited kayong pumasok sa animal welfare. So overall, you feel good. So in other words, although we might be able to describe how we are feeling overall, this is affected by many components that may be independent of each other. So for example, the comfort of your chair is not related to it's not related to how hungry you feel. However, they both affect how you feel at any one moment. So, pwede kayong matigas na yung upuan ninyo, pero you are hindi ka naman nagugutom. So, nako-compensate yung isang goodness doon sa poor condition mo. So, overall welfare is therefore a combination of these independent components. So, ibig sabihin yan, hindi porket you feel poor in one component and you feel good in one component, ang performance mo or yung status mo ay good na or bad na. So, nako-compensate na neutralize yung poor ng good situation. Okay, so they compensate each other. Okay, so animal welfare criteria. Animal welfare is also affected by many components. And we need to ask what these different aspects are. Now, the 5 freedoms provide a convenient list of aspects that are considered to be important for all animals. And the diagram above, as shown in your slide, shows the different freedoms across a scale from poor to good. And the poor side of the spectrum signifies that the particular need has not been met. And moving towards the good end, we can show that the need or freedom has been fulfilled. Now, an animal may have different levels of each of the 5 freedoms. Some of the aspects may be good, while others may be poor. Okay, so the 5 freedoms equals animal welfare. So if all these freedoms are being enjoyed by your animal, they are also enjoying or they are provided with good animal welfare. So the council believes that the welfare of an animal should be considered with reference to the 5 freedoms. So kung nafe-feel or na-enjoy ni animal yung mga 5 freedoms na yon, they feel or they are provided with good animal welfare. So from such as na-recite nyo na ito kanina, alam nyo na itong mga 5 freedoms of the animals. So these are the freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, and disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. So the freedoms have been advocated as important for welfare by many groups, such as the Animal Farm or the Farm Animal Welfare Council of the United Kingdom. So there is a considerable consensus amongst politicians and scientists in many countries that animal welfare can be considered in terms of the five freedoms. And these five aspects that affect the quality of life are worthy of consideration. Okay, so these five freedoms are grouped into five phrases, and each freedom can include up to three concepts. And it is important to note what is missing from the list. So example, you have there the example. They do not include freedom from what? Death. So avoidance of death in animals has an ethical value for many cultures. However, it is not animal welfare as this refers to quality of life. Although death is not included, the manner of death is relevant as inhumane death would compromise many freedoms. Okay. All freedoms are all freedoms equally important? Okay. Are all freedoms equally important? Okay. So
Yes.
in order to ascertain the relative importance of the five freedoms, as a questionnaire was sent to United Kingdom farmers who were asked how much importance should be placed on providing animals with the freedoms. The questionnaire was distributed to Tesco, which is a large UK-based international retailer. So, yun, nagbigay sila ng questionnaire, tinanong nila yung mga farmers kung paano nila i-assess yung five freedoms. So 70%, no, as shown in your slide, 70%, we are now in slide 11. Can you follow me, class? Okay. So there were a greater proportion of 70% of extreme important responses for hunger and thirst and pain, injury and disease than the other aspects. However, overall, at least 80% of all farmers thought that great or extreme importance should be placed on providing all freedoms. And this demonstrates that this group of individuals report a high level of concern for welfare. So 80% of this group of individuals are concerned with welfare. So how is motivation towards the five freedoms? So in this data, as shown in slide 11, from only one narrow group of individuals, and this concern will vary between customers and producers. It will also vary between cultures. So iba't ibang customers, iba't iba din ang perception nila dito sa five freedoms. At iba't ibang mga cultures, iba't iba din ang perception nila dito sa freedom, animal freedom. And this reported high concern does not guarantee high welfare, as there are considerable welfare problems on UK farms. So example, 20% of cattle are lame, and lung mortality is often more than 20%. Okay, so there are five freedom conflicts. So there are conflicts within the five freedoms. So the five freedoms are ideal states that are extremely difficult to achieve. No? Totoo, mahirap i-achieve lahat-lahat ng mga five freedoms. Okay, for example, some freedoms conflict. And to be free of disease sometimes requires treatment, and this induces fear during handling. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Kaya nagkakaroon ng conflict ang five freedoms na yan. Kagaya ng examples ninyo dito, if the animal is diseased, of course, you will induce fear during handling. How do we induce fear during handling? Yung pag-restrain mo ng animal, siyempre gagapusin mo siya kung may disease siya para magamot mo siya. So you are already there are freedoms that are conflicting already. So what are those freedoms that are in conflict in this example? Anybody from you who wants to recite? Rose-Ann. What are the freedoms that are in conflict with this example? To be free of disease, freedom from disease yon, yung isa na yon. And then, what is the other freedom that is in conflict with the freedom for disease or of disease? Okay, freedom of fear. Okay, now.
Sorry po, Chappy, Doc. Di ko po naintindihan.
Oh, sino Chappy? Ako?
Baka po sa internet ko lang po, Doc. Sorry po.
Okay. Anyway, let us continue. And to allow an animal to express normal behavior will inevitably cause distress on certain occasions during normal social interactions. And so, itong slide na to, pinapakita niya na yung five freedoms that are nagkakaroon din sila ng conflicts, no? Okay. All farming systems restrict normal behavior to some extent. So we have here again example of farming system that restrict normal behavior. Can you see the slide 14 wherein the cows are put in the barn and they are enclosed and they are even crowded, no? So these animals are in a farm system wherein normal behavior is restricted. So this is an example. So fences and housing restrict normal behavior. Controlled breeding restricts normal sexual behavior. So any reaction on this slide? Anybody from you? May I hear from you? Any comment? Any reaction from this slide? What can you say? What is your reaction on this slide? Why? Wala? Lahat kayo mahina ang net niyo? Okay, I'll move on to the John Adrian. John Adrian?
Yes po.
Sino ang Chappy? Ako?
Ako po. Doon sa part po na yun.
How about me? Chappy ba yung white net ko? Nag-chat ba ako? Mahina ba ako sa inyo?
Ngayon okay na po, pero di ko lang po alam sa iba.
Okay. So any reaction from this? Would you like to react, John? Would you like to react on this slide? On the
Which
previous slide?
which
On the
slide? Anong number po?
slide number 14. That all farming systems restrict normal behavior to some situations. Just like this, uh, the fences and the housing, there is a restricted or restriction in their behavior because they cannot move freely. They are crowded, no? They are being enclosed in a restricted area. And so therefore, their breathing is also restricted. Therefore, their sexual behavior is affected. Okay, so sinagot ko din yung tanong ko. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Let's move on to the next slide. Restriction of normal. So you can see here in your slide the sow. Okay, the crate of the sow. So the sow is also restricted from the normal, no? And also the other slide, I cannot see the other slide. It's so malabo. Okay, so some restrictions of normal behavior, such as farrowing crates, are obvious, as shown in the first or in the um, picture or in the figure on the upper left side. So farrowing crates restrict movement, no? And this prevents many aspects of normal behavior, such as maternal behavior and some interaction with other adults. However, no? However, farrowing crates are being used so that the piglets will not be crushed. Kasi kung hindi nakalagay si sow dyan sa farrowing crates, madadaganan naman niya yung mga biik niya and eventually, syempre, mamamatay yung mga biik. Kaya linalagyan yung kaya linalagay yung farrowing crates na yan. So, kaya nga sinabi dito. However, some restrictions are only highlighted after scientific investigation. So, for example, the lying surface in a cubicle shed can affect the lying time as much as the design of the cubicle. Okay. So the cubicle surface and lying time of a sow. So in this study on cows, assess the time they spent lying in a 24-hour period on different lying surfaces in a cubicle shed. Cows provided with a soft compressible bed would lie down for about 70% of the time, which is similar to a cow grazing period or grazing at pasture.
Doc?
However, this time was reduced when a harder rubber mat on a concrete surfaces were used. The harder surfaces therefore restrict normal behavior. And this restriction of lying behavior has health implications as increased lameness as associated with reduced lying time. Okay, next slide. So in the next slide, it is stressed here the significance of the freedoms. So the 5 freedoms do not give a detailed accounts of what should be measured in a scientific study, but they do give an initial indication of the relevant aspects that need to be considered in any study of welfare. So ibig sabihin, yung 5 freedoms cannot measure or do not give a detailed account of what cannot be measured but in a scientific study. Sandali lang. Okay, so the significance of five freedoms, again, do not give details accounts on what should be measured in scientific study, but they should give an initial indication of the relevant aspects that need to be considered in the study of welfare. They do not give or they do not define the minimum standard that should be provided, as they are ideal states usually impossible to achieve. So there is an international recognition that they are good starting point for welfare assessment. So sinasabi niya dito na yung five freedoms are a starting point to assess or to be used in welfare assessment of animals. Okay, so nararapat na dapat alamin natin yung mga five freedoms by heart so that we will be able to assess the welfare of the animals. Okay, so we need to introduce another welfare concept and distinguish between inputs and outputs. So there are many similar terms for these concepts. For inputs, these are the factors, provisions, resources, husbandry resources provided to the animals. Ibig sabihin, yung inputs, kung ano yung mga binibigay natin sa kanila, which includes the proper or husbandry management or animal management. Yung output naman, kung ano yung result ng pagbigay natin dun sa inputs, such as the performance of the animal. Example, if we give, if our management or if we give good management to the animal, the outcome or the output would be a good performance of the animal. And also the output will be animal-based and well-state. So indicator would be animal-related indicators that show the effects of the inputs on the animal welfare. The five freedoms and welfare inputs or factors. So the full text of the five freedoms include many inputs, and the highlighted yellow parts of the phrases in your slide indicate the methods by which the freedoms can be provided. Now, freedom from hunger. What are the methods by which the freedoms can be provided in freedom from hunger? So, ano yung nandyan? Hindi ko mabasa. Sandali lang.
Dok, madami po nang choppy.
Okay, sige. Okay lang. So, freedom from hunger, what are our inputs for freedom from hunger? So we should give them fresh water, we should give them diet, healthy diet, okay? Those are the examples, or yes, those are the methods for this freedom from hunger. What about from the freedom from discomfort? So we provide them an appropriate environment, which is the most important is shelter and a comfortable resting area. Just like you need a house to live on, and the animals also needs, or the animal also needs a shelter, a house to live on when it is hot and when it's raining, and a comfortable resting area. What about freedom from pain, injury, and disease? by prevention or rapid diagnosis and treatment. We give them vaccines, we give them, we perform deworming, we perform, yes, I've already mentioned vaccination so that uh, we will prevent the animals from contacting diseases. And when they are diseased, we bring them to the veterinarians or we treat them. As veterinarians, we have to treat the animals that are diseased so that they will acquire the freedom from pain, injury, and disease. How about the freedom to express normal behavior? Okay, by providing sufficient space, proper facilities, and company of the animal's own kind. Company of the animal's own kind. Anong ibig sabihin niyan? We don't isolate animals kasi there are animals that are social animals. Ibig sabihin, social animals na yon ay they live in a group. Hindi sila yung nag-iisa kagaya ng baboy. Ang baboy ay they usually live in group. They are social animals. Kaya ang advice ay kung aalaga ka ng baboy dapat dalawa, tatlo, ganyan. Yung isa ay malulungkot si baboy kasi nag-iisa lang siya. Okay? Example yan. That's one example. Yung manok, yung broiler, mag-aalaga ka ba ng isang manok lang? Of course not. Because they are social animals. Okay, freedom from fear and distress. So how can we provide them or provide them this freedom? So by ensuring conditions and treatment which avoid mental suffering. Aba, yung mga animals pa, meron silang pag-iisip, ano? So we should not give them distress or we should not make them fear. Okay, next slide. What's the next slide? We are now in slide 20. So welfare inputs and factors. So these welfare inputs or factors can be classified simply into Stockman, the environment, and the animal factors. The Stockman they are referring to here is the caretaker. So these are inputs, the stockman or the caretaker, the environment, and the animal factor. So example of welfare factors, as we've mentioned a while ago in the previous slide, the stockman. So ano yung input ng stockman in relation to welfare factors? So the empathy, the knowledge, and the observation skills of the stockman are the inputs of these welfare factors. The environment, these are the housing, the bedding, the feeding quality, and water provision. And the animal itself, is suitable to breed, age, and sex of the animal. So these are the inputs in animal factors. Okay. The common framework for quantifying problem. So we have three framework in quantifying the problem. In quantifying a problem. So this is the severity of the problem, the duration of the problem, and the number of animals affected by this problem. So once you have identified which aspects of the 5 freedoms have potentially been compromised, you also need to consider the severity of any welfare compromises, the duration. Pag sinabi mong severity, gaano kagrabe yung framework na yun or Kung gaano kagrabe yung problemang yon. Okay, next, the duration. Yung gaano ba kahaba, gaano katagal yung problema na yon that existed. And the number of animals that are affected. Okay? So if we, in our parlance, if we say severe, how acute, or the acuteness, the gravity, okay? Gaano kalubha yung sakit na yon. And duration, the period as I've mentioned, the length, gaano kahaba, yung tagal. And compromise, kung ano ang makokompromiso o ilan ang makokompromisong animals. So we have this framework in quantifying the problem: severity, duration, and the number of animals affected. Okay. In quantifying severity, ano na nga ang severity? Acuteness,
Kung gaano po kalala.
gaano kalala, gaano kalubha. Okay. So, in quantifying severity, we should also consider the behavior. Ano? The behavior, the disease, the production performance, and physiology. Okay. Severity can be assessed by numerous methods, and broadly, this could be based on the categories shown here in your slide. And these assessment techniques vary in the number of observation and sampling methods required. So, example, cortisol is a good measure of the stimulation of the acute physiological stress response, but it requires either careful blood sampling, no? Or aside from the saliva, aside from the blood, you could also get saliva or feces to assess the cortisol and analyze the sample. So however, observation of some behavior, oh wait, sandali lang. Okay. Observation of some behavior and disease aspects require relatively simple animal observation with a video or direct observation. So for you to be able to quantify severity, so kailangan obserbahan mo kung ano yung behavior niya kung binigyan mo siya ng cortisol. Okay? And you also observe, or you also quantify severity yung disease na na-inflict sa kanya o na meron siya. Okay, so i-assess mo the lameness and the pneumonia, if that is the disease that the animal is suffering from, and also the production performance. Ano ba yung production performance or yung growth performance ng animal? Ano ba, example, ano ba yung egg production ng manok? Madami ba o kulang? Normal ba or abnormal? And the physiology of the animal, the severity of the physiology of the animal, for example, the heart rate of the animal. Nung meron ba siyang sakit, ano ba yung kondisyon ng heart rate ng animal? Okay? So all these things, all these methods, or all these factors, behavior, disease, production, performance, and physiology are or fall under under severity to quantify or to assess the welfare of the animal. Again, example here. How severe is the social isolation of sheep? Di ba, sinabi natin kanina that there are animals that are social or social animals.
Gregarious po yung sheep.
Yes, Roan. So, this sheep, so the isolate itong sheep na ito. So, an example of a scientific assessment of the severity of social isolation in sheep is here in your slide. So, sheep are flock animals that are distressed if forcibly removed from their flock, and this effect can be quantified. Okay? Gusto niya sabihin, social animal ang sheep. So, pag in-isolate mo yung sheep, nagkakaroon ng effect doon mismo sa animal. And the effect or yung effect can be quantified. Okay, let's go to the next slide. How is it? So the isolation of the sheep can be quantified. Okay. Severity. The amount of distress can be simply quantified by assessing the number of vocalizations made. So, yun, mineasure nila yung vocalization ng sheep. So, in this study, there was a limited effect of removing a sheep into spatial isolation. So, they separate pen from the non-solid sides. So there was, however, a large distressing effect when a sheep was visually isolated from other sheep by putting it into a separate pen with solid sides. So, in-isolate nila, sineparate nila yung sheep doon sa isang pen na hindi niya nakikita yung mga kasama niya. So, ang pag-measure nila doon ay yung number of vocalizations. And the increase in vocalization in visual isolation is also reflected in an increase in heart rate. So, nagkaroon ng effect doon sa heart rate ng sheep doon sa pagkaka-isolate niya sa mga iba't ibang sheep. Okay? And the duration also. So, i-measure nila how long our sheep are sensitive to pain after lameness episode. So, explore an example of the duration of a welfare problem. We shall look at the length of time, okay, the duration that a sheep is sensitive to pain after a lameness episode. So, nagkaroon na ng lameness episode yung sheep na na-isolate sa kanyang mga kasama. Okay, nag-increase na rin yung kanyang heart rate. Okay, and in this study, examine the increased central nervous system sensitivity following lameness in sheep. Okay, what are the conditions? Ano na yung mga conditions ng sheep na na-isolate? Tumaas yung kanyang heart rate, nagkaroon siya ng lameness, at saka, ano pa? Okay, lameness. Karoon na siya ng lameness. Na-lame na siya. Karoon ng sheep, lameness na siya. So, the threshold stimulus is the force applied to a blunt pin placed on the leg of sheep that causes the sheep to lift its leg. Linagyan pa ng pin doon sa legs ng sheep. So a normal sheep will respond to about 5. However, a lame sheep will be sensitized to the stimulus and respond to a lower pressure. This increased pain sensitivity is still present 3 months later despite effective treatment of lameness. isolated pa siya. So, it lasted for 5 or 3 months na pilay siya for 3 months. So, assessing the number of animals affected by a potential welfare problem is relatively easy. So, in this example, the United Kingdom prevalence rates are shown for ano ba to? Excuse me ha. Sandali lang.
Yes po, Doc.
Can we have a recess for 5 minutes?
Yes po, Doc.
Yes po, Doc.
Okay po, Doc.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so it is indicated here to give you the difference between prevalence and incidence. So if we talk about prevalence, this is the proportion of animals affected at any one time. Whereas incidence is this is the number of cases of a condition per 100 animals per year. So to differentiate, kaya sabi niya prevalence is the proportion of animals affected in one time. Yung mga kung anong ilang animals ang affected ngayon, ngayong buwan na to. However, dun sa incidence naman, number of animals or number of cases of a condition or a particular condition per 100 animals per year. So yun ang difference ng prevalence and incidence. Now, take a look at this example. The confinement of a sow in a farrowing crate. So it is useful to apply the severity, duration, and number affected analysis to this situation. Okay, so in this example, it is applied to the confinement of a sow in a farrowing crate. And this example does not consider the welfare consequences, including the benefits uh, of the piglet. Okay, take note, class. This will be your assignment. This slide will be your assignment. So indicate uh, the severity, the severity, the duration, and the number of affected animals. Assuming here in the affected animals, you include the piglets. Assuming, okay, ano ko na dito sa yung affected animals dito, ha. Of course, the sow is affected. And also, the piglets are lagay nyo na rin, isama nyo na rin yung mga piglets. Lagay nyo lang sow and piglets, yung mga yung affected animals, number of affected animals, no? Lagaw nyo sow and piglets. But in severity and duration, kayo na ang mag-fill out niyan, and that would be your assignment. Okay? And that would be submitted okay, I'll give you the freedom to choose when you want to submit. When do you want to
Slide 30 po,
submit?
di ba, Doc?
Ha?
Next week, Doc.
Slide 30 po,
Lagay
di
ko
ba,
na
Doc?
lang dun. Again, Adrian, Jan.
Slide 30 po yung assignment.
Slide 30.
Or... Okay.
Slide 30.
Thank you po. Thank you po.
Okay, slide 30. Okay. When do you like to
Paulit po
submit?
kung ano yung assignment.
Slide 30. Slide 30, you assess putting the severity, duration, number of affected animal. So you assess that. In number of affected animals, ilagay nyo na lang sow and piglets. So doon sa severity and duration, doon ninyo fill outan kung ano yung ilalagay ninyo dyan. So that would be your assignment. Okay?
Okay po, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Thank you po. Doc, sa ano din po? Google Classroom po?
Yes.
Magpo-post din po.
Yes, sa Google Classroom, magbibigay na lang ako doon ng instruction and para ma-record ko lahat-lahat, kukuha na lang ako ng ano niyo doon, mga records niyo doon. So when do you like, when would be the deadline for that assignment? Friday? Tomorrow?
Okay lang po ba, Doc? Monday? Kasi po, ang dami. Kami pong mga irregular, Doc. Ang dami po.
Kaya mo yan, huwag ka munang kaya mo yan, huwag ka munang
Sige po, Doc.
bukas na lang, madali lang
Bukas
naman
po,
yan.
Doc.
Bukas.
Doc, Monday na lang.
5 p.m. po, Doc.
Oo, bukas. Bukas na lang.
5
Madali lang
p.m.,
naman.
Doc?
Yes. 5
Sige
p.m.
po, Doc.
tomorrow.
Thank you po.
Okay. So in this next slide, this study, this study is about the stress response before and during farrowing was assessed. So cortisol level in the blood are related to stress levels. No? And this is discussed in the physiological indication. So even in loose house animals, there is a cortisol rise during farrowing, and this is normal event during farrowing. Okay, take note, class. Cortisol. This is the when there is a cortisol, because cortisol in the blood, if there is an increased level of cortisol in the blood, that means you are stressed. Okay. Saan na ako? So cortisol response is greater in sows in crates as the sow is unable to perform nesting and other farrowing behaviors. So this is an stress hormone. So this study examined the cortisol response after farrowing in sows in farrowing crates. So days 1 and 7 have elevated level due to farrowing restricted or restricting nest building. Okay, and the cortisol response is greater on day 28. Why is it so? So because maybe this is due to inability of the sow to avoid the piglets, which she would have been naturally weaning at this age. So, lalong tumaas nung 28th day yung cortisol kasi that is the time when the piglets are about to be weaned, or that is the time for or weaning time of piglets. So normal cortisol level when not in farrowing would be about 2 nanomoles per liter. Whereas during farrowing and on the 28th day after farrowing, tumataas yung cortisol because of the piglets are about, or they are the piglets are being weaned. Okay, so farrowing crate. Nako, nandito na pala yung answer. Paano yan? Nandito na pala yung answer. Farrowing severity restrict from... Okay, sige. Raise nyo na lang yung assignment. Tuwan-tuwa si Rose Ann. Hello?
Thank you, Doc.
Tuwan-tuwa ka, no?
Hi, Doc.
Okay, gawin ko na lang yung assignment ka. Nandito na pala. Nandito na pala.
Thank you, Doc.
Tuwan-tuwa si Rose Ann, tsaka si John Adrian. Okay. Masaya ang weekend nyo. Okay, so nandito na pala. So, dun sa farrowing crate, the slide 30, severity, there is restrict in freedom to move around, restrict freedom to nest build, restrict freedom to avoid the piglets, and duration 3 to 4 weeks. Why 3 to 4 weeks ang duration niya? Ha? Bakit 3 to 4 weeks?
Dok. Winning, Dok.
Yes, correct. Kasi iwi-win sila on the 28th day. Very good. So, ayan na yung assignment ninyo. So, forfeited na yung assignment ninyo para naman makapag-weekend kayo na maganda-ganda, maayos-ayos. Hoy.
Thank you, Doc.
Enjoy si Rose.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay, so the intrinsic issue, farrowing crates are a significant welfare issue for the sow but are used throughout the world. No? Issue ang farrowing crate, pero why? It is unavoidable in commercial indoor pig. Kasi, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, kung walang farrowing crate, edi makakrash, madadaganan yung mga piglets. Edi bababa ang production ngayon ng farm. Kaya naglalagay sila ng farrowing crate para hindi makakrash yung piglets. Lalong-lalo na kung ang farm ay piglet production or kahit na hindi piglet production, maraming mamamatay na mga piglets kung walang farrowing crates. I'm having a class. Please keep quiet. So another example is the cattle in poor condition. So severity, how thin are the cows? Very thin. The duration, hanggang kailan siya magiging payat? And how many cattle are affected? Or yes, how many cattle are affected? Okay, so in conclusion, welfare can be assessed